Cambridge Film Show.
Cambridge Radio.
Hi there, and welcome to this fortnight's edition of the Cambridge Film Show, broadcasting right here on Cambridge Radio across the city and South Cambridgeshire. The festive lights may only just be switching on, but here on the show we realise we only have 2 more shows between now and the big man arriving. So it's going to be full tinsel later on in the show. Take this as full warning. To offset the Christmas cheer, we will also have some action, some historical drama, and I'm going to hazard probably the biggest release of the year. And it also obviously offers an alternative if you were planning on watching cricket highlights. Cricket, what cricket? Sharing the host chair today, it's me, Emma Elphaba Marchant, and Matthew, Madam Morrible Taylor.
Hello.
And as reviewers, we have Lorcan Wizard of Osneal.
Good afternoon.
And Stewart Scarecrow Paske.
Hello.
Hopefully all ready to share opinions galore. As you might have guessed by that intro, the big release this week is Wicked for Good, the highly anticipated second part of the big screen Wicked adaptation. But if pink and green and Jonathan Bailey are not your thing, I mean, are you actually dead if that's the case? Then we're also going to look at Glenn. He's so hot right now. Pal's turn in Stephen King's dystopian thriller The Running Man, and head into alien territory with Predator Badlands. James Vanderbilt tackles one of the 20th century's biggest historical events in Nuremberg. And as promised, we have not one but 2 Christmas treats in Netflix middle-aged rom-com A Merry Little Xmas and Disney Plus's A Very Jonas Christmas, with all 3 ex-teen heartthrobs playing themselves trying to get home for the holidays. Sticking with streaming, we are also going to dip a toe into action comedy with Prime's Playdate. So hopefully this hour could be, if I may say, the perfect way to spend this chilly November afternoon. So settle in. Grab a blanket or a mulled wine if you fancy, and let's dive into this week's cinematic treats with Matt.
So first up, we've got Wicked, certainly one of the cultural events of last year, and judging by the number of screenings it has in Cambridge at least, one of the cultural events of this year, or so it hopes. Essentially, it's the second half of the stage musical Wicked. Here's a trailer.
Couldn't be happier.
It's more important than ever that you lift everyone's spirits. As only you can.
Does that do what I think it does? No. No way! I'm obsessulated.
The wand really sells it.
Because happy is what happens.
Linda, the girl!
When all your dreams come true.
Okay, so Emma, we'll come to you first. So Cambridge Film Show ranked Wicked Part 1 as the number 4 film of 2025. Do you think Wicked for Good is going to live up to that?
Sadly, no, but I really... Right, okay, first of all, I want to preface this review by saying that I came in and I went straight to the toilet, obviously, and there were 2... girls in there, probably around 20, and they could not have been more excited. They'd also come out, and they were obviously huge fans, and they were like, they loved it, and they were very much like, we think it was even better than the first one. I'm not sure maybe what film they come out of, but anyway, no, right, as we know, they film these back to back, right? So there's no there's no difference between them, if you like. It wasn't like the first one came out with such a huge success that they decided to make a second one, and 3 years later it's come out. They were filmed back to back. It was always going to be this, exactly a year to the day after Wicked. The first part came out. We have Wicked.
There's not much scope to make changes if things were working.
No, if things hit
working.
or didn't hit. But I think we would all agree that the first one was a bigger success than anyone thought it would be. I've seen the stage show, and I actually enjoyed the cinematic universe of the first film more than I enjoyed the stage show. Where probably Wicked for Good suffers is it is a pretty faithful adaptation of a stage show where most of the bangers are in the first half. You don't have a Defying Gravity in the second half of Wicked. You have For Good, which is this very soulful duet between Cynthia Erivo's Elphaba and Ariana Grande's Glinda. I mean, I haven't really sort of even said what it's about, because I'm presuming everybody knows that already, but the second half basically carries, you
Bit
pick
of a
up...
time jump,
Yeah,
right?
you have a time jump. It was difficult to tell how long, maybe a couple of months or so, but you're basically pitting off straight away from where Elphaba has run away to go and, live in the forest and be with the animals and try and, turn everyone's eyes to the naughtiness that Oz is up to. And then Glinda sort of being PR managed by Madame Morrible, Michelle Yeoh, still horribly miscast, that hasn't changed. And Jeff Goldblum's also sort of the good against Elphaba's wicked. And then basically you see the pieces fall into place, which turns this into the prequel to The Wizard of Oz. And just as in the stage show, you see Dorothy's story, but this isn't her story, if you like. So
we do get the full plot of The Wizard of Oz as well, is that right?
You do, but you don't sort of see it on stage, which is on the screen or on stage, which is the same thing. So I think it does a very fine hand. I believe there are 2 extra songs that they wrote into this. I wouldn't necessarily have noticed which ones they were because I don't recall the stage show all that well from having seen it 10 years ago. I'm not a sort of Wicked super fan or anything. Once again, Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are delightful. In this one, Ariana Grande probably gets more time to shine than she did in the first one in terms of the amount of singing time she has and screen time she has. But it just felt much stagier than the first one. It feels like a stage, so it just felt much more static to me. There's much less, I think in the first one, the joy was being introduced, like I say, that cinematic universe and seeing that. You've seen that, and there's much less of it this time. It's a lot of characters walking around singing soulfully.
Well, the fun is getting to meet people, and then you have to see what they're actually going to do, which I imagine is less enjoyable.
Yeah, there's that, and also I think there's tonally there's some weirdness in it anyway, because historically the Wizard of Oz has never been a sort of he was never terrible. He was just sort of a shyster, and in this he actually does become an active murderer, which seems there are some weird hits that maybe you kind of in a much shorter stage show can get kind of glossed over when you're watching because remember this is 4 hour plus running time for the 2 films taken from a 2 hour. 2.5 hour stage show, I'm going to guess, including the interval. So there's a lot dragged out there. You have, as well, the cast in this. There was a big furore when, Coleman Domingo came out and said he was going to be voicing the Cowardly Lion. I think he gets 5 lines. And you're like, why would you hire Coleman Domingo? Why would you excite me like that just to give him 5 lines? It just felt the pacing was off in this second half. And I think maybe it would have benefited from, but like we said, it's very hard to do this when you do it back to back, but it might have benefited from a firmer hand in the editing room.
But do you think it's going to be troubling our top 10 for the year?
Well, I don't know. I feel like I've been talking and Lorcan said nothing. I don't know. I think it comes with a lot of residual good. There's a lot of residual good feeling going into this, right? And so when you said to me at the beginning, did I like it? You're not going to dislike it because it comes with heart and chutzpah and there's a wholesomeness to this, I think, and everyone who's in it really believes in what they're doing. And this comes from someone who did not like Crazy Rich Asians at all, so I think Jon MChu's done a great job with this in general over both. But I think as a piece of filmmaking, it doesn't reach the dizzy heights, if I may say, of Defying Gravity or the first one.
Okay, so Lorcan, we'll come to you next. I'm excited to take my daughter to this. She was a big fan of the first Wicked, and I've been hyping her up by getting her to watch Oz the Great and the Powerful from Sam Raimi. So I've heard this is a lot darker, sort of more of a political kind of overtones in terms of the way the wizard runs the kingdom. Is this accessible for young ones, or?
Oh, it's very accessible for young ones. I think young ones are probably going to get the most out of this because they can't comprehend just how stupid everything is. I think Emma's hit the nail on the head. The second half of the stage show, which I have seen, is famously terrible. I feel like that's just an industry secret. Like, everyone knows how bad the second half of Wicked is. Like, there's this awkward time jump that's anywhere between 12 months and 12 years. We've got no idea. Everyone's constantly saying clock tick for some reason. Every other line of dialogue was clock tick.
Yeah, I noticed
which
that.
drove me crazy. Just say a moment. So you got this time jump, and then everyone's in jobs that don't fit the character at all. You don't know how did Nessa become governor? just all these bizarre
and presumably graduated from university and they're all in the real world.
And she won a popularity contest somehow. Everyone's in these odd jobs, and it tries to recreate the whole story of the Wizard of Oz with this underlying subplot of what's actually really going on, which is the selling point of the book, which is mostly the selling point of the musical itself. But you've got the first half, which is so sweet. It's basically a high school musical, and then the second half is this big story that's effectively got 2 stories worth, but it's crammed into one half. And Emma's right. Like, it used to be a big thing filming things back to back, like when you have The Matrix or Pirates of the Caribbean. It's like, this is a monster hit. Let's jump on it. Let's film 2 films back to back. But every time they do that, the second one of the double feature, Everyone's exhausted. The crew are miserable. Like famously, The Matrix, all the crew said we were miserable, we were tired. No one wanted to be on set because you're just so run out. And this feels like it ran out of steam. It feels like everyone's very tired. They can't be bothered to do really proper staging. The effects start to look a little dodgy. And yeah, because they filmed it back to back, you don't have that reactiveness of what did people like about the first one. Like, if they were filming this now, Jonathan Bailey's just had Sexiest Man of the Year. They could do it. They could write a whole song about how sexy Fiyero is, and they could jump on. Be aware that anytime Ariana and Cynthia aren't in a scene together, the film's in real danger. They could have been told to maybe not use Michelle Yeoh quite as much as she did.
Well, she's the one that doesn't have a sort of singing background. She's sort of known for action movies of the past, and
her acting in this it's just not. She doesn't seem to be on the same vibe that everyone else seems to be. I will say, when Cynthia and Ariana are on screen together, it is magic. They can harmonize like nobody's business, and they're very charismatic. Jeff Goldblum was allowed to go full Jeff Goldblum. You cannot be annoyed with that.
Does he get a good song at least?
He does. In my opinion,
Wonderful's one of the best songs.
I think it's the only good song in the second half, and they do put a lot of emphasis on that. But it's just slavishly devoted to a famous second half that is just not very good. But then they also cut out like Fiyero. They make a mystery out of what happens to Fiyero. When you cut out one of the most interesting things about the second half is what happens to Fiyero and what he's doing behind the scenes. And then they save that as like what I can only call a jump scare for the end of the film when you find out what's happened to him. And
strange.
I did get the giggles at the end of this. It's because the editing.
I can confirm we watched this together.
Oh my God.
Okay, you've intrigued me now.
I was crying laughing because it was just so awkward, and I think the film broke me because it's.
The screening we were in, I was going to say nobody else. No. I thought maybe there might be some more giggles out, but these were some very enthusiastic fans, and they were taking all. I almost thought there was going to be applause at the end, but there wasn't.
I'm surprised there wasn't.
It did feel like that. I think there might be today. I think the show you're going to see with your daughter, I wouldn't surprise me if there is some applause.
Oh, I mean, the audience for Cats was also very quiet, and this is a very similar screening for me, where you just can't. In the first
film, just compare this to Cats?
Yes. Oh, 100%.
Lorcan.
Oh my God.
No, naughty Lorcan.
By the end, I think. Well, the first film does a really good job of carrying you away with the magic. It's kind of like watching Harry Potter. You're just carried away. So anytime there's something silly, you go along with it because it's so whimsical. But this, because it's a lot more flat and stagey, you see like cows with backpacks leaving Oz. I'm just like, how did a cow get a backpack? And I don't think the film wants me to ask that question.
I mean, yeah, if you're asking that question, it's just not working for you. One slightly odd question I have was, Keela settled in this from Greatest Showman, and I thought it was so strange seeing her in the first film as a sort of big musical performer who didn't get a song. Does she get to do anything? She
blink and you'll miss her. A bit like Bowen Yang, who again I would say is Saturday Night Live, and obviously was in the first one. Again, I think that he and Bronwyn James playing the kind of Glinda's sort of acolytes, if you like, and I think they were on the fun bits, and they get nothing. They literally blink and you'll miss them
because they didn't anticipate that the high school element would be such a resonating thing from the first film.
It's kind of amusing when you think that everyone is like 35 in our high school, but it worked somehow. It worked, and I totally forgot. Of course, Jonathan Bay dancing through life is one of the absolute cinematic highlights in terms of everything.
This one's
choreography, staging. There's not a moment in there.
This one's not sexy. Like the first one is sexy. I think that's what got a lot of people, but this one's just kind of it's a bit dry.
Well, like you said, maybe there is. It's still when Cynthia and Ariana are together. There is still. I think there is still some kind of sexuality there, and that very very close female friendship is not saying any more than that. But I think that's going to speak to a lot of and it's lovely to think you're going to take your daughter to see something which is a lot about female empowerment, and these are good messages to be sending our teenage kids, perhaps, to watch something like Wicked with two very strong female protagonists. It's just a shame there are no great songs.
Doesn't quite live up to part one, as it had a very tough time doing. Well, if you are interested, then it's rated PG for mild threat, and it's showing at all Cambridge cinemas pretty much all the time. So go and check it out. I'm going to hand over to Emma now to chat Predator.
Yeah, so from magical fairy tales to, I think, monster horror, because full disclosure, I have not watched. Let's check out the trailer, please, for Predator Badlands.
You're after a creature that can't be killed. The definitive apex predator. I could help you. Well, good luck with your journey.
Pretty short trailer, but that was a little bit of Predator Badlands. So it's directed by Dan Trachtenberg, who revitalised, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Stewart and Matt, by the way, but I'm going to, because I've done a bit of research, but not much, and I didn't see it. Directed by Dan Trachtenberg, who revitalised the series with Prey in 2022. Badlands is, if you can believe it, the 9th film now in the Predator franchise, which started with the only one I really recall, to be honest, back with Arnie in 1987. Trachtenberg has returned to the director's chair with the story of an alien outcast, Dek, played by Demetrius Schuster Kolomatangi, who teams up with Elle Fanning Cyborg to take on his own adversary. Who do you want? Who should I come to first? Stu, you were excited. You're obviously a Predator fan, I take it. So please talk me a little bit, tell us and listeners a little bit more about where this sits in the canon.
So, sort of in the canon, I think this is supposed to be said as a prequel. I think
no, it's a far future.
Far future. Okay.
So they said they wanted to set it so far in the future that you didn't have to have seen any of the others.
Fantastic. Wrong straight off the bat. Thank you very much, Matthew. But needless to say, wherever it's set in this timeline, I think one thing that is clear to point out from the beginning is they've decided to go with the clear angle that this is definitely the same universe as the Alien films, because the
Weyland
Yutani. I was thinking other Hollywood sort of anyway, other Hollywood corporate names, and the Weyland Yutani Corporation are feature prominently in this with Synthetics. Synthetics, of course, you probably would have seen most recently in Alien Earth on Disney+. And again, you see a lot of synthetics, a lot of duplicate synthetics on the screen. So when I say duplicates, I mean it's a lot of the same character being played by the same actor more than once, and that is particularly true with Elle Fanning, who is in this film playing Tia, who is our sort of main protagonist, but she also plays Tia's sister, who is a slightly more clinical version of the character, I think is probably safe to say. And then obviously she's on screen with Demetrius Schuster Kolomatangi, who plays our Predator, and or I think they're called the Yautja, I think is the name of the species in this universe. So obviously Alien, you have xenomorphs, Predators are Yautjas, and he's been played very well in terms of a mixture of practical effects and CGI. So I think you were a lot of the sort of facial capture technology, which then they overlaid the Predator face on top, rather than perhaps the practical effects that you'd have seen in the first Predator movie back in the 80s. But it's a good merging, and it looks really good on screen. Elle Fanning as well, again, her character is basically severed from the waist down for most of the film for reasons you'll find out. But again, it gives us another sort of interesting sort of a degree of practical effects meets CGI. I've seen a lot of the sort of production sort of featurettes behind the scenes stuff, and a lot of it Elle Fanning spent literally strapped to Demetrius's back on a trolley. So she didn't have to use her legs much for the first half of this movie.
Well, she does get to team up with her own lower half at one point for a pretty cool fight scene.
Yeah, exactly. There's a very good sort of fight scene where a torso and some legs fight some goons. I've never seen that before, but it was very well put together. But again, that sort of leads on to sort of just the level of effects and both digital and practical that go into making a big sort of sci-fi action romp like this. It's a fantastic sequel to Prey. Dan Trachtenberg has done a great job in sort of continuing his take on the Predator franchise. And I think there was another thing that Matthew was telling me about earlier that's on straight on Disney+. What was that called?
King of Killers.
Which he's also directed, which is also supposed to be very good, which I haven't seen, but I'll feel compelled to go and watch now. All in all, I think, given how excited I've been talking about it, I very much enjoyed it.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Stu, because you've also given me information I didn't know, which is the fact that Predator and Alien are connected. I had no idea about this. So, Matt, I'm going to turn to you. Outside, I mean, Stewart has really waxed lyrical there, particularly about, practical effects, which is a lot we talk about, but that's quite a specific thing for our reviewers that we pick up on. Outside of appreciating, is this a horror film? Is this an action film? What is it for your casual Friday night multiplex?
I would describe it as a Disney action film. It's very much the Disneyfication of Predator, which on the one hand I think does make it more accessible, and I think this film is doing very well. It's a 12A certificate. Notably, all of the humanoid characters are synthetics, which mean they bleed this milky goo. There's absolutely none of the red stuff, which means it can get that 12A certificate whilst having some some combat moves which if they were done on a human would be a 15 or an 18. So that's going to upset some people, because Predator, as we've seen it before, is very much the predator society. I mean, the name Predator makes no sense because they don't eat the things they hunt. They're hunting for sport. They will go to a planet, hunt the most dangerous animal, and most Predator movies are hunting a man, so Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then in Prey, hunting a sort of Native American warrior. And then in King of Killers on Disney, we see a samurai and a World War II fighter pilot. So that's always been what Predator is. Unspeaking, sort of unknowable alien force hunting for sport. This is very much what if Predator had feelings, which, as I say, is not anything like anything we've seen before. But it potentially is going to be where this franchise could have legs, because you couldn't just do unknowable alien hunts someone every single time. So it is going in a new direction. It does feel very Disneyfied because you've got the sort of lovable alien sidekick, clearly inspired by Baby Yoda. And essentially it's putting a lot of emotions onto the central character, because the film opens with two predators dueling each other, and then you find out they're brothers, and something awful happens, and the younger brother gets sent on his first hunt, where he has to hunt down this unkillable beast, the Callisk. So the film is essentially him going on to breaking his kind of predator virginity, almost, of doing a big hunt on his own. And yeah, that is cool to see, and he does get to develop a lot as the movie goes on. And one thing I did really like was that he learns from the planet. So as he's going on his adventure, he gets to experience lots of dangerous wildlife, and then in the big final confrontation, he brings back a lot of the lessons he's learned to make his own kind of makeshift predator suit, which was very cool. So sort of instead of the cool kind of laser cannon on the shoulder, he's managed to sort of find an eel that spits acid to be his little laser cannon. So there's lots of cool stuff like that. I mean, Dan Trachtenberg is clearly a very safe pair of hands, and I am excited to see where this goes, but it's definitely fully Disneyfied.
Okay.
Yeah, I think sitting in this, I agree. And it did feel quite Disneyfied. And there was that moment when I was sat in the cinema thinking to myself, this is going to be bad, isn't it? But it wasn't. I think it's done with enough respect for the lore, albeit the sort of the lore that has come about through the evolution of the franchise with its new association with the Alien movies and the Alien franchise. And it executed it very, very well. And I think that's sort of a thing that's going to be sort of quite rewarding to see on the screen across cinema, is where people have taken the lore of a universe that exists beyond cinema in print and elsewhere, video games, they respect it, and they turn that into a worthwhile and worthy movie adaptation, and hopefully will stave off any urges to go and ask AI to write everything for everyone.
Right, well, I didn't think we'd end up there at the end of that review, but thank you guys for. So yeah, I thought that was really thoughtful reviewing of Predator Badlands. It sounds like a recommendation. It is certificate 12A. I think it's hard maybe to catch that many screenings of it now, but you can still catch it, I believe, at the Light and potentially the Everyman. Right, back over to Matt for The Running Man.
So The Running Man, we've got Edgar Wright bringing us a dystopian future in which a desperate father enters a life or death game show in order to pay his child's medical bills. Here's a trailer.
People on these games never come back.
We have no choice. We need money for a doctor now.
Welcome to The Running Man. Contestants will be hunted for 30 days. Anyone can kill you.
Hunt them down!
Survive, and you will walk away with $1 billion.
I always thought this was fake.
So, Emma, I'll come to you first. The Running Man is two things, really. The Running Man original book, dark, satirical sci-fi, very bleak, very heavy. But The Running Man is also a campy, Arnie action film from the 80s. So What is this Running Man?
Well, to me, because I haven't actually seen the campy, because I was so cross with the campy Arnie 80s one. I was primarily because I'm such a huge Stephen King nerd, and the Bachman books. In fact, I showed you all a picture of my copy of it. It's literally falling apart.
It's very impressive.
And obviously, this year we've had both The Long Walk recently and then The Running Man, which, in my opinion, are the two best stories in there. And you say it's dark and satirical. It is a dark and satirical novella, but it's also the propulsion that gets you through that piece of writing by Stephen King is remarkable. I remember reading, I think, in one sitting. So this, as I understand, the whole press before it was we are going to get closer to this sort of gritty, dark, dirty original book rather than the Paul. Was it Paul Verhoeven? Who directed?
Detective Dave Starsky, Paul Michael Glaser.
Oh well, maybe I love that even more now. I really do need to watch it. Sorry, more than the Arnie one, and it. Of course, as predicted, I think it's and also let's not forget, this is a huge vehicle, I think, for Glenn Powell, who really is everything all at once. A little bit like, say, Jude Law was or Colin Farrell was. Suddenly you get a year where some kind of Hollywood star sort of leaps up or they try to push him up from a sort of high B star into an A star. So let's not forget as well, I feel like this has been a vehicle for a very affable leading man. And I think, probably unsurprisingly, it just ends up messily between all of those things. To me, it didn't quite hit any of the places it was trying to hit.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. In trying to satisfy kind of both camps, it ended up middle of the road mediocrity. But Lorcan, I'll come to you next. So let's talk about Glenn Powell. Obviously, he's a big star, hugely charismatic. I felt quite miscast in this because he's playing such an angry, ragey role. And he's such a charismatic guy that it just didn't really work. How did you feel about the central performance?
Yeah, I think there's one of the problems when you try to, like Emma's alluded to, push up. I do like Glenn Powell. I think he's got a lot of charisma, but he has kind of been pushed up by the PR marketing machine in Hollywood. And in this, he's constantly trying to prove himself, which is, one, really unattractive, and B, just like really tedious. Like Schwarzenegger would never have a rant about how a silk scarf would save like a dying baby in the third world. It's pathetic.
His character was kind of all over the place, wasn't it?
And like the film opens with him holding his like diseased baby girl.
Which is exactly the opening of the book.
And then David Zayas, so Angel from Dexter, is just like, did you bring your sick baby in to make me feel bad? He's like, no, I brought my sick baby in so I wouldn't get angry. I was like, well, hang on, neither of those are particularly likable character traits, are they? And he's angry, but in a really obnoxious way. Not like a put upon. He's just like a horrible chip on his shoulder.
He's angry like a kind of frat boy, whereas again the character of Ben Daniels is and he's almost just too shiny, really, I think, to be the star they want him to be in this.
Yeah.
Well, the book version of Ben Richards is not an action hero. He's a sort of scrawny, weak guy, which is ironic to then be played by Schwarzenegger and Glenn Powell.
Well, I want to say a shout out to the original Running Man, because I think it holds quite an important place in kind of cinema. Because when I was a kid, I would watch Predator and Terminator and Total Recall and Die Hard and all these like 10 out of 10 peak filmmaking action films. But I would always be left with this kind of hole afterwards. I don't have any more. The Running Man somehow managed to take all the best bits from those movies and makes not quite a good film, but it's like a really good kind of aperitif to all those other films. And it's just a lean 90 minutes of Schwarzenegger doing one-liners and fun action or memorable villains. This is, oh god, there's a reveal at the end about who the villain is, and the guy just takes off his mask. It's like, oh,
we don't care.
It's you. Okay, I don't know who you are, because they kind of set up that there's going to be like subterfuge, and they're going to you never know who they're going to be, and it's just some guy. So okay.
So Stuart, come to you next. So this is directed by Edgar Wright. I assume you're a big Edgar Wright fan, as am I. Where do you think this sits in the Edgar Wright filmography?
You can't tell it's an Edgar Wright film, I don't think. I don't think it really stands up against his previous work at all.
Which is a real shame, because, Hot Fuzz, I think, is just absolute peak of cinema. Yeah.
Maybe the soundtrack? I did think the soundtrack. I know. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. Well, we all know how you feel about Edgar Wright, Lorcan.
Well, no, I just thought this film was a mess. So I should admit I've come in with no sort of. This is a completely fresh take for me. I've probably seen clips of the '80s version with Schwarzenegger.
Well, it's no relation to Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, and I've never read the book either. So for me, it was completely a fresh take. And from what I'd heard from hearsay initially was that this was supposed to be a truer adaptation to the book. But from what everyone else has told me since then, that is definitely not the case.
Well,
Maybe
it's just because the Schwarzenegger version has no relation to the book.
I see. Okay, well, that's reassuring to know. I think possibly maybe, but does it help with the film? I think it starts out pretty well. I sort of think maybe the first third, the first half, it's pretty good. It's a good sort of bam, bam, bam action flick. But once they sort of move out of the city and they move into the next environment, as it were, once they've escaped the sort of the rigmarole of the city, it sort of loses its way a fair bit. I think it suddenly becomes less critical. He get away from the people who are trying to get him. I don't know. It runs out of steam very quickly, and then you sort of sit there waiting for it to end. And then when it comes to the ending, I know that from what I've heard, again, because I've not read the book, it ends in a very specific way, and they try and adapt this for the screen, but it's seemingly unfilmable, perhaps. And rather than make a good stab at filming something that's allegedly unfilmable, they have something that is been filmed badly. And it's the edits are messy. You come out with more questions than you have answers, and you just sort of, it's a very emotionally unfulfilling ending.
Absolutely agree, and you're right as well. I kind of started thinking about the War of the Worlds, the Tom Cruise, when he kind of goes on the journey throughout, because again, there's some sort of underground railroad that's helping Ben Richards get from place to place, but it never really.
The world building's just not there.
Well, yeah, and it does, and I mean, I'm sorry to keep harping on about a bit, like you say, it's hard not to talk about a book when they claim that this is a faithful adaptation to a book. I mean, Stephen King is getting into his latter years. Obviously, and everywhere you look, there is a Stephen King adaptation at the moment, so you can't compare them to each other. But yeah, again, like I say, in the book it doesn't matter so much because it's a very, very lean book. This feels flabby in the wrong way.
2 hours 15, it is flabby.
Yeah.
I think that's where the Edgar Wright thing comes in, because he, like Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead and World's End, are so snappy. Like the editing is the thing that stands out there. He cuts out anything you don't need to know. Anything
and Baby
that's tropey.
Driver Lorcan, our family favourite.
Let's just say I think Edgar Wright may be the lesser half of his writing duo since Simon Pegg left. But this is it's just like action scene, bogged down, boring character, blah 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 blah. Action scene, blah, boring. It's weighed down with all the tropes and all the stuff you don't want in an action film. It's really strange.
I will give, though, they do at least use Coleman Domingo better in this than they did in Wicked, because he can be Wicked for good. I did enjoy, and I
he
also
gets to have a lot of fun.
And Josh Brolin, I thought, was well cast as well as Killian, the reprehensible head of the network. Josh Brolin was doing some of his, most fun. They all seem to be having fun, and I don't want to be mean to Glenn Powell, because it's not, like I say, it's not necessarily his fault. This is sort of rested. He's being pumped up as a big kind of, he can open a movie, and unfortunately, when you're such close friends with Tom Cruise, and you've got Tom Cruise kind of going, let's save movies, everybody, with The Running Man. It's a lot of pressure to put on what is essentially an adaptation of a niche book and then a niche film.
I just felt that the whole thing was very episodic, because you're not getting to see him interact with characters for more than sort of 5 or 10 minutes at a time before he's on to the next set piece or the next bit of the.
And you don't care about his wife and daughter, right? Because you just see them in the first scene, so there's no sort of emotional heft to this film, even though there is, in a very slim book, there's no, you don't, like you said, like Stu said, you come out emotionally unfulfilled. Really, it's a shame.
And Michael Cera's in it for some reason.
Yeah, I did actually quite enjoy Michael Cera as the sort of murder nerd with his murder mansion, but that was a sort of a brief high point. Okay, so if you're interested in Running Man, it's Certificate 15 for strong bloody violence and language showing at the Light and Everyman. We're going to throw over to the ads now.
The Addenbrooke's Charitable Trust raises funds for Addenbrooke's and the Rosie, as well as the planned cancer and children's hospitals. In a new monthly show, we'll tell you about the people involved with this much-loved hospital charity.
It's a number of people I talk to who just phone in, make a donation, who equally have these amazing stories to tell.
Gavin Richards and Danny Smith speak to the medical professionals, the caregivers, and the inspiring fundraisers.
And that's enabled 200 more patients to be seen every month, and it's a bright, lovely and spacious surroundings with specialist equipments.
Acts Amazing People, online whenever you want, and Sunday at 12 on Cambridge Radio.
If you're over 60, now's the time for luxury retirement at Rangeford's Strawberry Fields in Stapleford. Make friends in their vibrant community. There's a restaurant and bar with a gym, swimming pool and full clubhouse facilities. Worry-free retirement at Strawberry Fields in Stapleford. take a tour of their show apartments, and make it your place to call home.
RangefordVillages.co.uk. Exclusively for over 60s.
If you're like me, running a small business, you know how important it is to get your name out there. That's where Altogether Plus comes in. They're bringing businesses together, from plumbers and gardeners to IT experts and lawyers, all on a brand new, easy-to-use website. You can list your business for less than £1 a month. And if you're looking for a local trader, well, you'll know exactly where to go. altogetherplus.co.uk.
Listen to Cambridge Radio on your smart speaker.
Say Ask Radio Player for Cambridge Radio.
We are Cambridge.
Cambridge Radio.
You are listening to the Cambridge Film Show here on Cambridge Radio with me, Emma Marchant, Matthew, Stew and Lorcan. If you've missed any of your favourite shows or coverage on Cambridge Radio, then please remember you can catch up at any time. Just head over to the website cambridge.radio and search for Listen Again. It's where you'll find all the old Cambridge Film Show shows as well, if you fancy listening to those. And if you want to get in touch to let us know what we should review, or if we're missing anything, there's lots of ways. You can text or WhatsApp us on 07919 070 490, or you can email us at studio@cambridge.radio, or you can search for us on the socials. Okay, on to our next review, and we are looking at one of the most famous trials of the 20th century. This is Nuremberg.
Justice Jackson? They captured Hermann Göring alive. What are they going to do with him? You are standing inside a secret military prison. It houses what's left of the Nazi high command. Hey! Never do that in my prison again. The governments of Russia, France, Great Britain, and our United States will put these men on trial for their lives.
It can't be done. There's no international law to base the charges on.
The world needs to know what these men did.
That was the trailer for Nuremberg. Prolific producer James Vanderbilt's prolific producer, but only his second directorial feature after 2015's Truth. As the title tells us, it focuses on the eponymous trials held by the Allies following the end of WW2. Rami Malek and Russell Crowe head up an impressive ensemble cast as psychiatrist Douglas Kelly and Hermann Göring, respectively, as they engage in a battle of mind games, with, I'm presuming, the trials going on around them as well. This is just Matt on this because, unfortunately, as we'll say at the end, it's proved difficult to find decent showings of this, which sounds like a great shame because I believe Matthew's very keen on this. So, Matt, is this sort of a step above your standard procedural grown-up drama?
So I may be wrong about this, and I think this film is going to annoy a lot of people, but I think it's doing something actually really smart, and this is going to sound a bit bizarre, but it reminded me a lot of It Ends With Us, because It Ends With Us is a domestic violence movie that portrays itself as a rom-com, and this is a Holocaust movie that portrays itself more as a sort of, I want to say, a Marvel movie, because the first hour and a half of this, and you don't get a sense of it from the trailer, but it's very snappy dialogue, very quippy, very much sort of characters being introduced with montages. I mean, at one point, Michael Shannon's Justice Jackson goes to meet the Pope to persuade the Pope to back the trial, and does so by reminding the Pope of his own kind of history with the Nazis. And then as they're leaving, our character just turns to him and says, "Did you just blackmail the Pope?" And it's like, this is not a line that can be in a serious movie. And what this manages to do is, for the first hour and a half, you almost forget that it's a Holocaust movie, because we get to see Rami Malek's Douglas Kelly as a psychiatrist. He's basically doing card tricks, talking about the book he's going to write and talking about how this is going to be the thing that makes his career. You see Russell Crowe as a Nazi just playing a thoroughly jolly chap. And there's sort of no evidence of what's happened at all. And then an hour and a half in, as the trial begins, you're hit with a sort of 5-minute sequence where the characters essentially watch real footage from the Holocaust, from the concentration camps, and it's shown in full detail on screen. So real footage of real dead bodies for an extended period of time. And it's such a tonal shift from the kind of light-hearted quipping that's gone before that it then becomes extremely shocking. I mean, it's already extremely shocking, but because you have been kind of set up with this light-hearted first hour and a half, it gives you that full whiplash, and you're sort of experiencing it as, along with Rami Malek, who's the sort of central character, he's then realising the true horror of what Russell Crowe and the Nazi high command have really done.
And has he almost been charmed by Russell Crowe then up to this point? Does it go that far, or not? Is it not quite that sort of
No,
on the
absolutely.
nose?
I mean, the point it's making is that the Nazis are not evil in terms of they are not genetically different to anyone else. There's not a gene for evil. There's not something about them that makes them evil. They are essentially normal people who have done evil things because of the circumstances within which they found themselves. Essentially, Russell Crowe's Hermann Goering, he's not drawn to Hitler because Hitler hates the Jews. He's drawn to Hitler because Hitler wants to make Germany great again. If you know, there are certainly parallels with what's going on in the rest of the world, which is why I think this is an important film. And I think what it's doing is so clever, because it's not saying the Nazis are evil. The Nazis are normal people, and normal people can do evil things. I mean, Hitler didn't kill 6 million Jews. 6 million Jews were killed by essentially normal people in an extraordinary situation.
And do you think then, by lulling you, well, like you say, by lulling Rami Malek's character and then the audience into this false sense of security, it's a little bit like, wake up, this could be happening right now in 2025. We've been lulled into the false sense of security. You think these people are buffoons, but actually maybe there are much worse things going on than we think there are. We should never let this happen again.
And that's why I think this is such a clever movie, and why I want to see it again, and why I'm going to be putting it in my top 10 for the year. Because it just feels like you can't. If it had been the tone of the final hour for the full 2.5 hours, it would have been exhausting. But that first hour and a half that's so snappy, almost like an Aaron Sorkin movie where characters are kind of fast-paced.
Well, it's a super cast as well, isn't it? Because not just Russell Crowe and Rami Malek, but you've got Michael Shannon in there. You've got Leo Woodall, one of our rising stars in the UK, Richard E. Grant, Colin Hanks, and I can't even. That's only halfway down the list or whatever. It is a great cast.
Yeah, it's a fantastic cast, and everyone's sort of getting the opportunity to be snappy and funny in the first hour and a half, and then do the sort of more traditional kind of heavyweight acting in the second hour. And I think the final court section where Hermann Goering as Russell Crowe finally takes the stand and gets examined by Michael Shannon as the American judge, and then Richard E. Grant sort of tag teaming as the British contingent. I think that sequence is really strong, and
he doesn't crack in A Few Good Men like way, does he? There's nothing quite that. There's nothing quite that sort of dramatically cheesy. Maybe because, like I say, it's really hard to find viewings of this. And is that because it is a more difficult watch than perhaps you would think it would do, looking at the glossy poster?
I think, as I say, I think people are going to be annoyed with it, because I think, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't be offended by the first hour and a half being so glib, but and I think. There are a lot of historical inaccuracies, certainly to do with the eventual and final fate of Hermann Goering. But for me, as someone who doesn't know much about the history and was willing to go along with what the film was doing, I found it a very interesting and unique experience that I'm intrigued to see again.
And can I ask one question? Russell Crowe is leaning into this sort of third act almost in his career, I think. And as Hermann Goering, does he give a controlled performance?
Yeah, he's absolutely fantastic. I mean, is he
the highlight for you? Was he the highlight for you?
Oh, he's definitely the highlight. And essentially, Rami Malek is doing such a sort of odd performance that for most of their scenes together, Russell Crowe comes across as the more human, and Rami Malek's kind of driven by greed and his own kind of pride at wanting to write this book. And Hermann Goering just comes across as a normal guy, and he's sort of saying, well, of course I didn't know about what was happening. I'm just trying to make Germany great. So it is interesting that Russell Crowe sort of started his career with a performance as a Nazi in Romper Stomper, but a very different Nazi to what we see here. Whereas in Romper Stomper, he's a true believer, whereas in this, he just is using it to get Germany to be great.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Matt, for, again, a very insightful review. I feel that we're nailing it today, if I say so myself. That is Nuremberg. It is tough to find, I warn you, at the cinemas. But then, as we found the other day, After the Hump, for example, which we reviewed a couple of weeks ago, is already available to stream. So I think at the moment, things do come very quickly to streaming.
All those by Wicked.
Yeah, exactly. So if you miss a chance to see, if you can't find a screen release on a big screen, I think it comes highly recommended from Matt, and you should obviously try and seek it out. It's a certificate 15. Right, I'm sticking with me, but we're going to move on to our streaming offers.
So it's Playdate.
With Playdate.
This is awesome, right?
Give me a hug.
No, no hug. Ow. The first day my son meets his new best friend, so did I.
All right, guys, dig in. Dad's never taken you for pizza?
Jeff's not my dad. He just took me.
Okay, that was Playdate, which is starring the duo that we never knew we needed or indeed wanted of Kevin James, ex of Mall Cop, I guess, and Alan Richson, best known for Reacher, which means I presume he's got a kind of contract with Prime to shove some films in there too. Playdate gives us the story of stay-at-home stepdad Brian, Kevin James, whose life is turned upside down when he and his son accept a playdate with Jeff Richson and his all-American son CJ. Lorcan, let me come to you on this. We talk a lot about streaming on this show, and we always talk. We often talk about how the fact that Netflix sort of gets the showy, maybe the showy big budget ones, and then quite a lot of few Amazon Prime films can sneak under the radar with a lower budget, less noticed. Is this one of them?
It's snuck past me because I was really dreading watching this for every reason that you've just said. It's got.
Poster doesn't inspire.
I do a review show and I've got to watch it.
It's got Kevin James, who is definitely an acquired taste, and it looks cheap. It starts off with the classic, here's an exciting scene, now let's flash back 24 hours to before that happened. Any Rick and Morty fans will definitely resonate with that kind of trope. But the film did slowly win me over. I didn't find anything funny in the first bit. I think as soon as Alan Richson comes in, he adds this kind of over-the-topness to the scenario. And what you think is just like a cutesy, I haven't seen the trailer, so what you think is a cutesy playdate between Kevin James' son and Alan Richardson's son, while the two men are kind of becoming friends, turns into this big, ridiculous sci-fi thing, but very, very underplayed. But I think I was oddly charmed by Alan Richardson and Kevin James. I think what mainly sold this for me, I think the two child actors are very good. I think the kid that plays CJ, in particular, he's got a great kind of stone face, and it must have been very hard for him not to kind of want to overact as his character is by default, kind of in a default kind of serious stoic mood. I think those two played off. Those two were really well cast, and they played off together as like you've got one kid who's really social and outgoing, Lucas, played by Benjamin Pajak, who's
a theatre kid.
Yeah, well, he was a TikTok dancer kid who was most recently in Life of Chuck. He played young Chuck, and then Banks Pierce, who plays CJ, and so CJ is really underplayed, and Lucas is really over enthusiastic and really wanting to make friends, and so it's kind of the opposite for the dads. But I think Kevin James's story I actually really liked, because straight off the bat, Lucas is constantly saying, I love you, Dad, because Kevin James' character is his stepdad, but Lucas has been very quick to adopt him as a dad. He says, Dad. And then towards the end of the film, you find out that Kevin James is really uncomfortable by that. He doesn't feel like he's earned it, and he thinks this kid who he thinks is so great should have a much better dad than he. I thought that was very, very sweet. And then Alan Richardson, he's so over the top, but the story is so ridiculous that he's perfectly fit for the him and CJ subplot as well. I don't know. It kind of worked for me. I didn't think it was cringe or particularly unfunny. There's enough stuff there to keep me enjoying, and it's 90 minutes. For a streamer, that should be applauded.
I must say I wholeheartedly agree with Alan Richardson. He really made me laugh. My husband's obsessed with Reacher. I have not watched it, and obviously he is a physical presence if nothing else. But I was just as charmed as I am by, let's say, the Kevin Hart and The Rock duos that you get. Matt, what about you? What did you think of it? Were you also dreading it? I have to say, by the way, this currently gets 20 on Metacritic, which I think is really harsh, although that is only with 6 reviews, because maybe people don't actually bother reviewing Playdate professionally, unlike us.
I guess I'm a secret Kevin James fan, because I think he is going through a bit of a renaissance. He's sort of moving away from the sort of Adam Sandler style of movies. He recently did a movie called Becky, in which he plays a sort of neo-Nazi who's sort of leading a home invasion, and that's a real change from what you typically imagine Kevin James as. And in fact, in this, he's the straight man, and Alan Richardson gets to be sort of crazy, and kind of he looks like such a physical beast of a man that it's just like can't imagine him existing as a real character. But yeah, they do have good chemistry, and I think when it's the four of them, so the two dads and the two kids on screen, that's when the movie works. But it is just a kind of parade of semi-famous cameos. You sort of got Sarah Chalke as Kevin James's wife, who sort of delivers the performance entirely over the phone. Alan Tudyk turns up as evil billionaire for a few scenes. They got Paul Walter Hauser. He probably gets the funniest.
He was great.
He was also Stephen Root popped up, and I was disappointed as Alan Richardson's dad. I was disappointed not to see more of him, and I was also disappointed not to see more of Isla Fisher's kind of band of wine guzzling suburban mums. That seemed to have, and actually one of the most fun bits of this whole film, I don't know if you thought, was the blooper reel at the end of it, and that made me feel
charming.
it was quite cute and charming. It seemed like these people all appreciated what they were making, if you like. I think maybe in that showed.
Well, it felt
as
like a movie that you're meant to watch on your phone or watch while scrolling your phone, because if you didn't follow a bit, it doesn't really matter. You'll be able to pick it up in the next scene.
Yeah, 100%.
or maybe when while you're ordering takeaway on a Friday night, like a perfect kind of prime streaming film that way.
Sort of the quality of the film is secondary to just it existing and having some recognisable names and faces in.
But they are recognisable names and faces who I think we all agree are having a pretty good time while they're doing it, and not necessarily talking down to you. And like I say, I'm really an untapped comic energy and enjoyment in Alan Richardson, for sure.
Yeah, he is really going for it.
Yeah, and he does. Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. He goes for it, and he doesn't care. He doesn't have any pretenses about it. And I think one to watch. Thanks, there, Emma. That's one to watch. Maybe we need to push him rather than Glenn Powell. Is what I'm saying. To some action films. Right, that is Playdate. It is a certificate 15, and it. Is it certificate 15 or I made that up? Certificate PG-13? It feels like a 15 because there is some violence in it. So certificate 15 is streaming on Prime.
So next up we've got our Christmas double bill to see out the show. So first up we're going to go for a very Jonas Christmas. Here's a trailer. Oh, sorry, no trailer. So the Jonas Brothers, they're on a journey home from London to America for Christmas, but they're also on an emotional journey regarding not just what does it mean to be brothers, but what does it mean to be the Jonas Brothers. So, Emma, did this work for you?
I'm almost hiding in my talk because I'm so surprised that it did work really well, and it might even be my second film of the week, probably after Wicked for Good, because I can't take it that seriously. I am too old to be a Jonas Brothers fan from when they were in their Jonas Rock Camp movies or whatever, but I've recently very much enjoyed their new music, DNCE and Cake by the Ocean and the stuff, and also Sucker. They're
tart but sweet, like a Sour Patch Kid.
Exactly. I love the quotes in this. Your brothers like the Bee Gees. Your brothers in a band like the Bee Gees. This was I thought a really sharply written, fun and festive treat. It's only an hour and 20 minutes. Like you say, the Jonas Brothers are playing kind of exaggerated versions of themselves. So you have Kevin, who is, traditionally the dull one who doesn't sing anyway, and, they sort of play that up. Nick, who's the organised one, who's sort of bossed around by his slightly older wife anyway, and then Joe, who is the playboy, which obviously after a very public marriage breakup, I thought it was quite brave to go out and do that anyway. And I think they find a real charm in it. There is magic in this. They come across Father Christmas, who decides it's time for the Jonas Brothers to realise what made them get on in the first place after their years of toiling on the road. And I also thought to myself, as someone who works with their siblings myself, I take my hat off to the Jonas Brothers for managing to do this for as long as they have, maybe, and still seem to have some kind of affection, love and charm. It's got some good music numbers. It's got some good costuming in it. I thought it was a lot of fun.
It's very solid, isn't it? And with 10 original songs, although I struggle to remember any of them. Did you have a standout song?
None of them was Sucker, I must admit, or Cake by the Ocean, so maybe I didn't. Although actually there was quite an emotive ballad that they sung while they were lost in some rather festive looking Christmas trees.
Yeah, I mean, they do a lot of globe trotting here, sort of London to Amsterdam,
And you have who's the guy who's playing?
Randall Park.
Yeah,
their
playing
agent.
who I think of as the voice of Kevin the Logic Rock from the dearly departed Human Resources, and it just like I say, I think. We talk about Christmas movies a lot on here. We're going to do a Christmas movie in a second, which I think I'm the only person who's seen. This, in comparison, was just it. I honestly can't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah.
It really made me laugh, and I think the writing is sharp, on the nose, very 2025, lots of very valid references, and I think it would hit a lot of people's buttons. It's great, even if you think you don't like the Jonas Brothers. I would suggest watching this.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Sharp and funny, and definitely going to give you what you want. Okay, so next we have another Christmas movie, this time from Netflix, Merry Little Xmas, in which we see the aftermath of the traditional Hallmark movie, in which a woman who sacrificed everything for love now has to reckon with the end of the fairy tale. Here's a trailer.
I love Christmas. The lights, family time. It's awesome. But this year, Christmas might look a little different.
Divorce does not mean that we are not still a team.
Yeah.
Legally, it kind of does.
Santa's little elves are here.
You invited Everett's dads?
We have joint custody.
This is our first.
So essentially, subversion of the traditional rom-com is what this is billed as. Did it work, or...?
No, it did not. I'm so happy that, because I sort of shouted this one out, because Netflix, we are sort of becoming the new Hallmark in a way, or adopting and they are bringing out Christmas movies, and they're dropping them every Wednesday between now and Christmas. And this was this Wednesday, so I thought we must put that in there because it's Alicia Silverstone back, and she has a lot of
good get for Netflix.
Yeah, exactly, and I have a lot of affection for her, as many people do, I'm sure, particularly post Clueless. But sadly, it's her ex-husband is played by Oliver Hudson. There is zero chemistry between the two of them. You have Jamila Jamil as his new girlfriend who comes in, and then you have Pierce from Fode, most recently seen in The Wrong Paris, who I must admit I have quite a soft spot for him. He was probably the funniest thing in it, playing this ridiculously good looking.
He's having fun, isn't he?
He has, yeah, and I think he's having more fun, I think, than the rest of them are. But I think my issue was I just couldn't buy into them as a couple either. Oliver Hudson and Alicia Silverstone. It was a perfectly viable way to spend an hour and 45 minutes while you're doing something else, which isn't very good. Watch the Jonas Brothers instead.
I only made it about halfway through, but it looked like after setting up this subversion that it then looked like it was just going to go do the exact same thing as every other Netflix rom-com.
Well, yeah, and of course, and at the end she realises that home is the best place to be, and that her ex-husband is the best person to be with. So I would say watch the Jonas Brothers instead. Right, that wraps it up for this week. Thanks for joining us, whether you're live or on catch-up, and please join us in a fortnight when films will include the latest Knives Out mystery, Wake Up Dead Man, Blue Moon and Zootropolis 2, and could include a whole host of other movies. Maybe Christy, maybe Friday Night at Freddy's. Why don't you ring in and let us know what you want? Yeah, that's it. So goodbye from me, and goodbye from all the guys.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.